Yellow cracks, ink pens abound. So I'm going to do a quick follow-up. In specific, one of the things that I'm doing a quick follow-up on is going to be on the 3 Montblanc 146s. I think that was where a comment came in, and it's got some information that is definitely worth passing. In specific, one of the things that they talked about was the solitaire, the precious metal editions versus precious resin. Person commented that they believe it was 925 that was in the marking. Oh, I'm almost 100% certain that they're absolutely correct. We'll go ahead and zoom, see if we can possibly see it. I have no idea whether or not we're going to actually be able to see it, though. But the reason why I say that I have no doubt in my mind that they're correct. Oh yeah, there you go. Check it out. 925 is because it's sterling silver. 925 is the mark for it. I probably misspoke when I was doing this the other day. It's really easy to do. I really am not looking to go overly crazy with the production value on my stuff. So I don't write a script. I don't re-edit to make sure everything's 100% spot on. I apologize for that. You'll find I love to say 149 when I mean 146. And there's another prime example was saying something else instead of 925. It is sterling silver. It is absolutely gorgeous. It has been polished once before it made it to me. So I don't see myself necessarily doing it a ton more. If the image doesn't capture it, it's gorgeous in person. It's very shiny. It's a very luxurious feeling. And it just feels exceptionally nice. One of the things I found that was really interesting is I did weigh it, specifically when I received my Pelican. It's an M800. It felt so light. I actually worried about its legitimacy for a second. Then I looked at some other things. There's no way it was not legitimate. But I worried about its legitimacy based on what it weighed. So I weighed everything. And it was amazing to see that all these resin pens were almost all identical. They were like within a gram of each other. This was almost twice the weight. And it feels like it feels nice. Some people talk about you not being able to write for a long time with a heavy pen like that. I'm not noticing it yet, but I generally do not write more than 2 pages in an A5 format when I'm writing with one of these pens. So I'm not really all that worried about long-term writing. What I will say is we also discussed feeds. I'll talk about that in a second. But I did want to hit this nib. So the person said, like, hey, listen, effectively a German broad is a stub that's got tipping. I pretty much don't disagree with that. The downside of the tipping, some people talk about baby's bottom. I'm not experiencing baby's bottom with this pen whatsoever. It's been in another person's collection for a long time. It's an absolutely gorgeous writer, and to be honest with you, I am also fairly well certain, like with little things like that, that person really utilized this pen an absolute ton, and rightfully so. It's fantastic. But with that tipping that we were talking about, it glides exceptionally nice, but it also turns it into more of a fat line without variation. Like a Sharpie would be. As it glides along, it does not change at all some of the look with the write. So you could take a look, there's one item that had a little bit more line variation, even more line variation there out of that broad. But give me a second, I'll go ahead and do a thank you with this. I'm a lefty, holding the camera with my right hand instead of mounting it, which I should do. We're gonna do it, let's mount it. So quickly mounted, I will just do a little thank you with this pen. Long story short, I will do my best to give you the best line variation that I can. But you'll see, it turns almost into a very, very thick, Sharpie-like line instead of something with a lot of variation whatsoever. It's just thick consistently, whether I'm on an upstroke, a downstroke, moving left to side, it doesn't seem to matter. Now, don't get me wrong, go ahead and tip her up on 90 degrees, and I could probably get a much thinner line than if I am down at a standard like 45 writing. And, ooh. All right, so that does appear with some line variation. Some people might even say that's monstrous. I certainly would not. But when I go ahead and take a look at something like a music nib, this is the line variation I anticipated the broads or double broads or triple broads having. That's just more along the lines of what I had anticipated. There's definitely a little bit more shading from that, and there is 100% more line variation getting from some of the thinner portions to the thickest portion. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is picking it up, but I'm gonna go ahead and bring that closer. You can quite literally see in the shading of that T, there's literally what might have turned into railroading on another pen, but because it's got the triple tang, it doesn't do it on this pen, which I do love. All right, so some of the other things that they talked about really quickly is this 70s and 80s pen. So I'm gonna bring this bad boy back out. Standard 146 Legrand from the late 70s, early 80s. They talked about the split ebonite here, so I think there's enough lighting that you can definitely see the ebonite feed on this bad boy. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. It says it's actually a ridge. It is called a split ebonite feed and helps with the ink flow while flexing the nib by keeping the feed and nib in contact, which I believe we talked a little bit about that as far as keeping ink up against the backside of the nib so that it can be a very flowing writer. I mean, she's juicy. There's no question about that. The person who's giving the information is Iron Mike 9244. Iron Mike goes on to say he's got a couple of the Montblancs himself. They're great writers, and the finishing is second to none. I've talked about the finishing. I 100%, literally 100% agree with him all the way. The finishing is fantastic. It is definitely second to none. You know, another flagship style ink pen is going to be any of the higher end Pelicans. And I can assure you, this Pelican is fantastic. It's gorgeous. It really looks the part from any distance. In the hand, it does not feel the same as this Montblanc. It really and genuinely doesn't. And I know, unfortunately, that's like one of those things, hey, you're going to have to go to a pen show or a very high-end store that's going to have multiple of these pens so you can feel them. The place where I bought this Pilot was at Varney's in DC. I happened to be on a work trip there. I really wanted to take a look at good pens. They handed me a handful of Montblanc, and unfortunately, the reality was that the Montblanc and the Pelican that they both handed me and said, oh, here are some reasonable flexing nibs. I expected what an old dip pen would do, and he was like, no, man, nothing's going to even be close to that. And he hunted for a little while and then thought about this Custom 912 and said, hey, give this a try. And as soon as I felt this, I was like, okay, for a modern pen, that's about as close as it's going to feel for me. That's why I bought it. When I think of these three pens right here, three different manufacturers, the fit and finish are really spectacular, but there's not even a close comparison once you have them in hand. I hate to say it. I've heard other people try and argue with it, and that's fine. That's why they're chocolate and vanilla. But everybody knows vanilla is the best. Now, come on. Please pick up on the sarcasm there, people. Nobody take that personally and get butthurt. All right, that being said, genuinely think I agree with Iron Mike here. The Montblancs have better fit and finish. I actually think that the Pilot is very comparable to the Pelican. I really do. The Pelican is more attractive. It has some more detailed features, like the bill and the eyes, and just the triple tearing in their finial. It's stuff like that. That definitely stands apart for this. But boy, for a Pilot, this feels fantastic in the hand. Again, I know it's their heritage custom, but they took that seriously. The Falcon, on the other hand, that somebody has commented on, is not. You might as well save yourself the money and go buy yourself a lower end pen that outperforms it in circles like there's no tomorrow. Whether it's got misaligned tines or not, which, by the way, I don't disagree with misaligned tines. The person selling it definitely warned of that as a potential. Okay, so I was asked what pens am I looking to sell. I do keep on talking about what I am going to sell. One of the ones that I'm going to sell is definitely going to be this Montblanc. There's no question about it. The 70s versus 80s version. I'm going to sell that pen. I'm not selling it because there's something wrong with it. I'm not selling it because I don't love it. I'm selling it because I don't want to have 50 pens laying around that I don't go grabbing for. And I believe that the pen that it's going to get replaced with is going to be their calligraphy. I think that the quote unquote modern day wet noodle of a nib is going to be what I'm looking for. I love the look of a striated ink window. I don't think I've used up enough ink that you can sort of see this. Not great, but I do love the striated ink windows on the newer pens. I find it more attractive than the gray/blue style on the 70s/80s pens. So that's why I'm going to sell this, not because there's any reason to not keep it other than having so many pens. And it's an expense. It really is. As it sits, I've got thousands of dollars worth of pens sitting around. I like them all, and I want to grab at very specific pens. And I feel like once I have the calligraphy, I will not grab at this 146. So that's why. And again, these are Iron Mike's words. He goes, I hope it's not this pen. The split ebonite feed is considered rare. It's highly prized because the nibs nowadays are quite hard. There's no question. This pen definitely has a significantly softer nib than all of my other Montblanc. All. Hands down, 100%. We're going to see whether or not you can see a little bit of flex in this. I'm not going to be trying very hard to go crazy. I'm just going to do standard thank you from my hand. All right, so let's see. Here's a test that you'll often see. Let's see whether or not we can get wobble. There's definitely a little bit. You can see thick, never railroads, down to thin. There's the line variation that that's capable of. There's no question about it. It is definitely nice. Push a little bit harder. That's a soft nib for a quote-unquote more modern-day nib. That's why people do love this. I don't know, but I am hoping that the calligraphy has more flex than that. Only someone who owns one could answer that question. But there's your follow-up. That's most everything that I've got to say about all that. Iron Mike in specific, thanks for all of your information. I love that about this community. People really give good feedback. They come back and talk to you about items that you might not know. Even if it's something you do know, they're refreshing some memories that you haven't thought about in a long time. The old penguin system of remembering things, the iceberg and something's off swimming. Anyways, all that being said, thanks for everything, and I appreciate your time. Have a good one.